Stop. Hello, good day. I want to check my voice is clear or not. Okay, and just for checking the voice, if anybody can hear me, please reply me yes in checkbox. If you can hear me, please write yes in the checkbox, and then we can start. Everybody can hear me? Okay. Hello, good day. My name is Hassan, lead auditor and medical device assessor DMVGL from Malaysia office. First of all, thank you for participation in our webinar. I am graduated in biomedical engineering for both of bachelor degree and master degree with more than 12 years experience in the field of medical devices. I hope this webinar helps you to better understanding and the key changes of new European regulations and what actions you need to start to be prepared for the change in the MDR and planning for CE marking. I would like to explain you in this webinar new medical device regulation and some new changes that have in new regulation of European Committee. It means these key changes will be included recertification, market access of legacy products, reprocessing of single-use devices, technical documentation, clinical evaluation, vigilance and PMS, post-marketing surveillance, mandatory product liability insurance, transparency, person responsible for regulatory compliance, PRRC, supply chain, labeling and UDI system, which is new requirements of MDR. Also, I will explain you about transition and timeline to MDR and programmatic approach for legal manufacturer. This webinar is not training, just for informing you about new changes and how you can start for CE marking based on new requirements of MDR. On 5th of April 2017, the European Parliament voted to adopt the long-awaited medical device regulation and in vitro diagnostic regulation, IVDR. Actually, Directive 93/42 EEC on medical devices and Directive of 93/85 EEC on active implantable medical devices have been replaced with medical device regulation, MDR. On the other hand, Directive of 98/79 EC on in vitro diagnostic medical devices has been replaced with in vitro diagnostic regulation, IVDR. New regulation framework in the field of medical devices is expected to ensure more protection of patient safety and public health, legal certainty and innovation-friendly environment, more transparency like supply chain and some UDI system identification, something like this, and more European approach for new requirements. In fact, in medical device regulation, MDR, we have 123 articles and 17 annexes, and in compare with previous medical device directive 193/42, which was included 23 articles and 12 annexes, there is so many new requirements, and the volume of pages and volume of requirements has been increased. In this webinar, we will focus on medical device regulation, and I hope in our next webinar we can focus on IVDR also. I would like to explain you about some new changes and key changes of medical device regulation. First of all, we have some change in classification of medical devices. If you remember and you are aware, in medical device directive 93/42, we had in annex 9 classification of medical devices, which was classified in class 1 to A, 2B, and 3. In this medical device regulation, classification is the same for 2, 4, and classified. But some changes has been occurred. Certain products have received special consideration in the MDR and are subjected to reclassification based on Article 4 MDR. These new previews variously apply to cosmetic implants, standalone software, products without unintended medical purposes based on Annex 14, Annex 16, and certain spine products and reusable Class 1 devices. This classification is included 22 rules. In compare with Medical Device Directive, it was 18 rules. It has 22 rules. There are changes to classification rules, and some products are now assigned a higher class, requiring a more demanding conformity assessment process. For example, some products that used to be 2B, Class 2B, are now Class 3 and thus subjected to a design examination. In this classification rules, we have 22 rules classified in 4 groups: non-invasive devices, which is including Rule 1 to Rule 4, invasive devices from Rule 5 to Rule 8, active medical devices from Rule 9 to Rule 13, and from Rule 14 to Rule 22 will be special rules. What manufacturer can do is manufacturer of medical devices should certainly examine the MDR classification rules in Annex 8 to determine whether now conformity assessment rules are now applicable to their product portfolio. If so, they should engage their notified body where necessary and take steps to evaluate the necessary timescales involved in implementing this change. In some cases where reclassification has occurred, this may be the first time that such relationships and agreements with notified bodies have been required. The next item, which is new change, is market access of legacy products. There is no provision for grandfathering certification CE marks obtained under the previous directives. All products have to be CE marked under the new requirements and new regulations, MDR, in order to be placed on the market or put into services after the transition period. A comprehensive plan needs to be put in place to ensure that all products that will be maintained on the EU market are CE marked in accordance with the full requirements of the new MDR. This should include products currently under development. This review may provide an opportunity for rationalization of the product portfolio and elimination of any marginal products. Other changes is relevant to reprocessing of single-use devices. This has been a highly controversial topic during the evaluation of the MDR. It is now specified in the MDR that there is reprocessing and further use of single-use devices should only take place where permitted by national law, while complying with requirements laid down in the regulation MDR, based on MDR Article 17. Reprocessors are considered equivalent to manufacturer and therefore must ensure an equivalent level of safety and performance to that of the corresponding initial single-use device. In this case, reprocessing must only take place if permitted by the relevant national law, and reprocessors have the same obligations as device manufacturers. Reprocessors should check that reprocessing will be permitted in their national law, and if so, understand and embrace the full implication, requirements, and obligation of a device manufacturer. Prior to an MDR, they may not have had to consider these aspects, and upskilling or additional staff may be required should relevant professionals not already exist in the company. The other change is relevant to technical documentation. Some new requirements are relevant to this technical documentation. The MDR is significantly more prescriptive about the required content of technical documentation and including technical file and design dossier. essential requirements are replaced by general safety requirements based on Annex 1 in MDR, and the number of requirements has been expanded. The presumption of conformity still applies for devices that are in conformity with relevant harmonized standards based on Article 8, but the Commission may define common specifications where no harmonized standards exist or where they are considered insufficient. On the other hand, there are more detailed requirements for the quality management system based on requirements of ISO 13485 edition 2016 was rewritten and issued in 2016 with the new MDR very much in mind. It should be noted that while EN ISO 13485 is not an absolute requirement, there will be a general expectation that this standard will be used. In Annex 1 for MDR, we have safety and performance requirements, which is included safe performance as intended state of the art. Part 2, risk reduction, risk management, risk control. Number 3, lifetime. Part 4 about packaging. This is some essential requirements and some general safety requirements that include in Annex 1. Part 5, evaluated benefits of achieved performance shall be more than known and foreseeable risk and undesirable side effects. Number 6 and 6A is new items. Devices with no medical purposes shall not present any risk or only the maximum acceptable risk. And machinery directive is included also. Chemical, physical, and biological properties. Part 8, infection and microbial contamination. Part 9, devices incorporating a medicinal product and devices composed of substances that are absorbed by or locally dispersed in the human body. Part 10, devices incorporating materials of biological origin. Part 11, constructions and environmental properties. 12, devices with a diagnostic or measuring function. 13, protection against radiation. 14, electronic programmable systems. 15, active devices and devices connected to them. 16, protection against mechanical and thermal risks. 17, protection against the risk posed to the patient or user by supply energy or substances. Protection against the risk posed by medical devices intended by the manufacturer for use by laypersons. And the last one, 19, information supplied by the manufacturer, which adds some items to these requirements. Implant card, which is relevant to implantable medical devices based on Article 16. Promotional materials CE marked based on Article 18. And UDI, unique device identification, for Article 24. Also, there are some other changes. Device description based on technical documentation, which mentioned in Annex 2. Annex 2 is including technical documentation shall be included, not limited to device description and specification, including variants and accessories, information to be supplied by the manufacturer, design and manufacturing information, general safety and performance requirements based on Annex 1, benefit risk analysis and risk management, product verification and validation, including preclinical and clinical data and additional information required in specific cases. In this case, what manufacturer can do is the required technical file or design dossier documentation is heavily based on the current GHTF and guidance documents reflecting the harmonization intent of global regulators. Accordingly, the continuing sufficiency of the technical file or design dossier, including associated checklists, will need to be checked in detail manufacturer will need to remain alert to the publishing on new common specifications. In addition, manufacturers should be aware of a new subsection related to required post-market surveillance (PMS) information. The next changes is relevant to clinical evaluation. The MDR is more specific about the need for clinical evidence and clinical evaluation proportionate with the risk associated with the given device, based on Annex 14, Part A, and reliance on the specific literature to demonstrate equivalence will be more tightly regulated, and clinical evaluations will be more closely aligned with clinical trials and associated with medical products. In this case, manufacturer may request clinical strategy review from EC expert panel, clinical data only from published peer-reviewed data. For Class 3 normally required clinical investigation. Post-market clinical follow-up required for Class 3 and implementable devices updated at least annually summary report. So annually is required for updating for summary reports for Class 3 and implementable devices. Consistent EU processes. European Data Bank on Medical Devices, which called EUDA MED, clinical investigation documentation detailed precisely. Clinical evaluation for Class 3 and implementable devices can rely on equivalence data only which have two conditions. Two conditions is included manufacturer's own proven equivalent device or devices where manufacturer has contractual access to all data of equivalent devices. So manufacturer cannot use equivalent device for any medical devices in the market for Class 3 and implementable devices. They have to follow these two conditions. In this case, this may require manufacturer to obtain additional clinical data from clinical studies. There will be additional scrutiny of clinical evaluation reports by notified bodies as outlined by new guidance MedDev 2.7.1 revision 4, and clinical evaluation reports that previously were of a suitable level and standard and accepted by notified bodies may no longer be accepted. Manufacturers should plan to review all of their clinical evaluation reports, if not reviewed within the last 1 or 2 years, and ensure that clinical evaluation report include post-market surveillance data, especially where devices are new to market and where clinical data was limited at the time of first CE marking. The next item is about vigilance and post-market surveillance change in MDR. The MDR is more specific about the need for clinical evidence and clinical evaluation proportionate with the risk associated with given devices. Under the new regulation, device manufacturers will be required to collect post-market clinical data as part of their ongoing assessment of potential safety risk. Post-market clinical follow-up, PMCF, is a continuous process with the objective of constantly updating the clinical evaluation. Additionally, reporting timeframes are tightened from 30 days to 15 days for reporting serious indecence. So it's decreased from 30 days to 15 days in new regulation, Article 87. There will be new electronic vigilance reporting and periodical safety update reports for all devices subjected to differing frequency and submission requirements. Also, PMS suitable to analysis data on quality, performance, and safety. Update risk-benefit determination, clinical evaluation, summary of safety and clinical performance, and PMCF plan is required. Periodic safety updates report defined, including volume of sales, population of users, and frequency of use for class 3 and implementable updated annually and submitted to notification body. Also, vigilance in line with the new MedDev and annual surveillance plans from authorized, including announced and unannounced facility visits. It should be noted that the processes for post-marketing surveillance and post-market clinical follow-up should be implemented as soon as possible, as the data generated will be very useful for documenting compliance to the new requirements when you apply for MDR. Manufacturers need to review their procedures for PMS and ensure that the responsibility for the provision of this additional data and associated support is clearly established. This is likely to require additional resources in functions that support products on the market, such as regulatory and medical affairs. Next change is about mandatory product liability insurance. Manufacturers must be able to provide sufficient financial coverage for their potential liability directive based on Directive 85/374 AEC. This provision will be based on risk class, type of device, and the size of the enterprise, based on Article 10, number 16. Manufacturers need to review their product liability provisions under advice from legal counsel. The next item is transparency. More transparency is one of goals of this medical device regulation. Transparency is one of the guiding principles expounded in the MDR preamble. Transparency and adequate access to information appropriately presented for the intended user are essential in the public interest to protect public health, to empower patients and healthcare professionals, and to enable them to make informed decisions, to provide a sound basis for regulatory decision making, and to build confidence in the regulatory system. This will eventually take the form of a European data bank on medical devices called EUDA Med, based on Article 33 MDR, which will also be made public for certain devices. On their part, manufacturers will need to notify all products to EUDA Med database. Manufacturer should closely follow the continuing evaluation of the EUDA Med system and prepare for its implementation so as to be able to notify all products to the European Data Bank medical device database. The next item, which is new change in MDR, is about person responsible for regulatory compliance. Each manufacturer will be required to appoint a person responsible for regulatory compliance called PRRC, and in early drafts of MDR, this was first referred to as a qualified person. However, this was deemed to be confusing with the pharmaceutical industry QP, and it's now PRRC. MDR Article 15 is about this new rule for manufacturer. The PRRC must have a university degree or equivalent in a relevant scientific discipline and at least 1 year of professional experience or 4 years of professional experience. On the other hand, based on requirements of MDR, the qualification of this person shall be demonstrated by either of the following qualification. One is a diploma, certificate, or other evidence of formal qualification, a word on completion of a university degree or of a course of study recognized as equivalent by the member state concerned in law, medicine, pharmacy, engineering, or another relevant scientific discipline, and at least 1 year professional experience in regulatory affairs or in quality management system relating to the medical device, or 4 years of professional experience in regulatory affairs on or in quality management system relating to medical devices. So this person, if has either these two qualifications, can be considered as PRRC in manufacturing sites. The next change is about supply chain. We have so many changes in supply chains. There are also more prescriptive requirements based on EU authorized representative called EUAR based on Article 11. The MDR states that the authorized representative should be jointly and severally liable with the importer and the manufacturer. The EUAR will also be required to be registered and must also have a PRRC. So authorized representatives have to have a person responsible for regulatory compliance. The MDR extends the scope of the regulations beyond the device manufacturer to other economic operators in the supply chain. Distributors and importers are now specifically regulated and have a specific regulatory obligation too. So many new requirements is relevant to distributor and importers. In this case, manufacturers should consider their entire supply chain to ensure that these provisions are adequately addressed and agreed with their business partners. Agreements with EUAR, if used, should be revised and updated together, ensuring that EUAR have defined plans to be registered and also have appropriate levels of insurance to cover their new liability. Also, EUARs have to identify a person who is suitable, qualified to assume the PRRC role. The next items, which is new change in requirements of MDR, is about labeling. Requirements for product labeling are more prescriptive under MDR than before. For example, information supplied by the manufacturer shall be made a label and kept up to date on the manufacturer's website. So in website, they have to update this information of labeling. There are requirements for specific details for labels and for a sterile package based on MDR Annex 1. Inclusion of information on residual risk for vulnerable patient groups, for example, children, pregnant or nursing women, and if applicable, on appropriate precautionary measures in the instructions for use in IFU, and also hazardous substances needed. For labeling, manufacturers should carefully review the adequacy of their products' labeling and precautionary statements and consider how this will be reflected on their websites. Other change which is very important and very new for medical devices is UDI system. The MDR requirements requires the traceability of all devices placed on the EU market except custom-made medical devices by means of a unique device identification system, UDI system, based on international guidance to significantly improve the effectiveness of post-market safety-related activities for devices. In MDR articles 27, 29, 31, and Annex 6 is relevant to UDI system. Each device will need to have an assigned UDI obtained from a UDI supplier, and this information must be uploaded into European Data Bank for medical devices. UDI must be established before the product is placed on the market, and the UDI carried must be provided on the device label, packaging, and in the case of reusable device, on the device itself. It should be noted that for logistical reasons relating to European database medical devices and a delegated act on UDI, the UDI requirements cannot be immediately implemented and will be phased in beginning in 2021. So based on classes, manufacturers have enough time to meet requirements of UDI. This UDI system will be starting with the highest risk devices, class 3, and implementable devices, and continuing to class 2B, then class 2A, and class 1 device over time. Detailed project planning for UDI implementation in the EU, additional to that currently required by the FDA in the US, will be required. While the detailed specification of the EU UDI system is still under discussion, current information suggests it will not differ significantly from the newly established US system. Manufacturers who don't supply their products to the US will have the steepest learning curve on EU UDI. However, they can also learn from the successes and mistakes of US UDI implementation, but in some cases it's different from FDA UDI system. These are key changes of medical device regulation, and I want to explain now about timeline and transition period. As you can see, this MDR has been published in 2017, 5th of May 2017, and now we are in June 2018. In this case, date of application for MDR will be a start from 26th of May 2020. It means before this time, no notification body cannot issue certificate based on MDR. And the end of notification by MDD 9342 will be before 26th of May 2020. It means all certificates will be issued based on MDD 9342 can be issued only before 26th of May 2020. And after this time, the certificates of CE marking will be issued only under MDR. End of validity, all medical device directive certificates based on 9342 will be 27th of May 2024. It means after this time, we have the other certificates which is issued cannot be valid. So the last time validation for certificates for based on MDD 9342 will be 27th of May 2024. And end of CE marking based on MDD and devices on the market will be 27th of May 2025. It means all medical devices after 27 May 2025 on the market are certified by MDR, not based on MDD. To sum up, transition period is from 2017 to 26 May 2020, and MDD devices available on the market will be at the end of 27 of May 2025, and MDD certification issuance will be till the end of 26 of May 2020, and after that all certificates will be issued shall be based on MDR requirements. Also in MDR we have some change for notification body, and after some publicized safety issues in recent years that have strongly influenced the evaluation of the MDR, notified bodies are themselves under considerable pressure from their respective competent authorized to hire scrutiny of their client medical device manufacturers. Notified bodies will themselves need to seek designation under the MDR in the months after the MDR is adopted. Notified bodies across Europe are already and are expected to continue to encounter capacity issues. There has been a significant decrease in the number of notified bodies accredited by the European Commission to deal with medical devices in the speed of a sustainable increase in workload, and with the MDR coming into play, notified bodies will also need time to prepare and train their staff. So we will face with reduction in quantity of notified bodies in NANDO. This suggests there will be significant over-demand from the industry for notification body services as manufacturers compete for their services during the transitional period. It is vital that manufacturers engage with their notified body early and ensure they have the capacity to assist them and that they agree on timescales. Notified bodies have already started to conduct announced inspections of manufacturers, their critical subcontractors and suppliers. Now, I want to explain step by step what manufacturer can do for transition to MDR. First of all, manufacturer shall brief executive management to ensure they gain a clear understanding of the importance and business implication of the MDR. Ensure that overall responsibility for MDR implementation has been established and that a cross-functional programming team is formed in order to cover all aspects. Study the detailed requirements of the MDR. Perform a detailed gap analysis for products and the whole organization against MDR requirements. Give a specific and special consideration to certification expiry dates versus transition period and enforcement dates. Review the MDR implementation plan, identifying and addressing key areas of risks. Consider organizational challenge, management awareness, staffing capability and availability, budget implication. Continue to actively monitor the still developing European regulatory environment. Check classification rules and confirm conformity assessment routes for existing and future products and take steps to address any change. Contact the selected notified body and determine their capacity and availability to service the implementation plan. Review the change needed in existing technical documentation, technical file or technical dossier, design dossier. Determine the adequacy of clinical evidence and address any gaps based on clinical evaluation reports. Review the adequacy of quality management system processes and plan to transition to ISO 13485 edition 2016 and build in the new regulatory requirements into the quality management system. Then identify persons responsible for regulatory compliance based on new requirements and be sure they are adequately qualified and trained and plan their training if applicable as early as possible. Review product labeling. Ensure product liability provisions are adequate. Ensure PMS arrangements are adequate. Review supply chain provisions and clarify roles and responsibility of business partners. Prepare for unannounced inspections for notified bodies. Ensure regular review of progress versus the MDR implementation program plan R and held and included in the management review process. This is what manufacturer can do for step by step for CE marking. And for certification process, I want to explain what will happen. Once implemented, all requirements by manufacturer, the notified body will need to conduct a new certification audit of your company. The certification process is initiated with a new application for certification and result in a new certificate valid for up to 5 years. The certification activities include assessment of technical file for class 2A to B, evaluation of the design for class 3, evaluation of the quality system for compliance, and finally an on-site audit where implementation is verified. If the manufacturer has outsourced significant activities or are using crucial suppliers, an audit of these may be needed before the certification process can be finalized and the certificate issued. At the moment, DNVGL NEMCO Pre-Safe under notification number 2460 is ready for support you for ISO 13485-2016 certification, CE mark certification, and validity of certification for CE mark for 5 years. Thank you for your attention. I hope this webinar has profit for you. And if you have any questions, you can send me an email to hassan.zarin.mer@dnvgl.com and I will reply you as soon as possible. Thank you.